Tower, this is Flight 737, ready for takeoff.
Roger, 737, you are cleared for takeoff on runway 29er.
Have you ever been stuck on a runway, just, watching the minutes tick by, wondering why your flight just isn't moving? Or maybe you've heard the news about those system glitches, those baffling hiccups that suddenly cause widespread chaos across our skies. It's a stark reminder that even the marvel of air travel, which, let's be honest, we often take for granted, has its vulnerabilities. Well, today, we're going to peel back the layers on something the FAA is calling a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a really monumental, comprehensive effort to completely transform and modernize America's aging air traffic control system. And this isn't just a minor patch or some kind of gradual upgrade. We're talking about building a brand new world-class system pretty much from the ground up. And the mandate is crystal clear. No excuses for delays. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the FAA's incredibly ambitious plan, delve into the remarkably aggressive 3-year timeline they've set for getting it done, and really understand why this modernization isn't just critical for industry experts, but for you, the general flying public, who simply wants to get from point A to point B safely and, efficiently. This whole conversation stems from a recent FAA Industry Day event where government and industry leaders basically convened to kick off this massive undertaking. It's a colossal challenge for sure, but one with equally colossal implications, and we're here to help you make sense of every fascinating detail.
It truly is a pivotal moment, yeah. And the urgency behind this initiative, it really can't be overstated. When we talk about an aging system, it's easy to dismiss it as just a general complaint. But the reality, based on the source material from this industry day, it paints a much more vivid and, frankly, pretty alarming picture. We're talking about a national airspace system where the average technology in use is from the 1990s. Let that sink in for a second. And some equipment is even older, 30, 35, even 40 years old.
40 years, wow. That's older than the internet for a lot of us. I can't even imagine running anything critical on tech from the 80s or 90s.
Precisely. Yeah. And to put it in perspective, the source material uses some incredibly relatable analogies. Imagine trying to navigate today's hyper-connected, real-time digital world with like a flip phone or an old iPod, maybe even playing a target pong. That's the kind of technological chasm we're attempting to bridge here. And this isn't just a small corner of the system we're talking about. It's a staggering 74,000 individual pieces of equipment that are directly impacted by this technological antiquity.
Yeah.
This isn't just about old computers. It's radar systems. It's communication networks, the very tools air traffic controllers use every single second of every day.
74,000 pieces of equipment. That number alone is just
Yeah.
huge. And it's not just the software or the internal hardware. It sounds like it extends to the very physical structures, the actual buildings where the stuff is housed and where controllers work.
Absolutely. That's a critical point. The problem isn't just confined to circuit boards. It's also the, sometimes crumbling foundations these operations depend on. Many of the original facilities, the nerve centers of our air traffic control, they were built way back in the 1960s. For instance, the Fort Worth Center, that's 1961, Denver, 1962. Seattle, also 1962. And if you were to walk into some of these facilities today, the sources describe seeing things like, original, often worn out carpets, initials etched into desks that are decades old, and maybe surprisingly, even ashtrays still physically present long after smoking was allowed. Physically, these structures are showing really severe signs of deterioration. We're talking reports of leaking roofs, water coming in, mold, other fundamental structural issues.
Yeah.
So this physical decay combined with the profoundly outdated equipment it houses creates what you can only describe as a monumental sustainment crisis.
Right. I can only imagine the headaches involved in keeping such ancient infrastructure running. Old equipment usually means expensive, hard to find parts, if they even exist anymore.
That's where the true, absurdity of the situation becomes apparent. The sustainment costs for this outdated equipment are just astronomically high. It's not just because parts are scarce, but because the entire supply chain for these legacy systems has pretty much collapsed. Yeah. Companies often just don't manufacture the necessary components anymore, or they do, but at prohibitive cost because the volume is so low. This forces the FAA to resort to what they candidly call cannibalizing our own systems.
Cannibalizing, like literally taking parts from one old machine to keep another one running.
Exactly, yeah. Stripping parts from one old, maybe failing system to keep another equally old one operational. It's like having multiple vintage cars, and when one breaks down, you take a door off another to fix it.
So they're sacrificing one antique to save another.
Well, precisely. And in some extreme cases, they've even had to resort to looking on, wait for it, eBay for specific components. like a particular type of mouse with a USB cord that's just not produced anymore. A particularly stark example given was the runway status light system, where they've reached a point where there are simply no replacement parts available anywhere, period. This isn't just an inconvenience or some line item on a budget. It's a fundamental, unsustainable challenge to maintaining operational reliability. The real insight here, I think, is how deeply intertwined the physical age of the system is with its fundamental inability to evolve. It's not just about saving money. It's about the sheer impossibility of maintaining these bespoke, decades-old systems in a modern supply chain. The FAA isn't just buying parts. They're essentially operating an antique repair shop for critical national infrastructure. And that situation inherently introduces, well, unquantifiable risks and just stifles any kind of real innovation.
Wow, eBay. That visual, it perfectly captures how truly creaky this system has become. And when you think about systems being held together by, well, maybe not literal duct tape, but eBay fines, what does that mean for the actual people on the front lines, the air traffic controllers, the technicians who rely on this tech every single day?
That's where the human factor and the looming specter of brain drain come into play. And it's a critically urgent challenge. Imagine being a young, digitally native air traffic controller, right? Entering the workforce today, a group with smartphones, advanced computing. Now you're forced to use methods that feel like they belong in a completely bygone era. Things like manually writing flight information on paper strips with a pen instead of interacting with modern integrated digital tools. It's incredibly frustrating for them and inefficient. The sources also highlight that the average age of a technician in the FAA is between 50 and 54 years old. This means a significant brain drain is happening right now as experienced staff retire. They take with them invaluable institutional memory and, honestly, esoteric knowledge of these complex legacy systems. When you're dealing with systems so old, they're practically custom-built and barely documented. Losing those human experts is, well, it's devastating.
That institutional knowledge, yeah, that's irreplaceable, especially for systems held together by decades of specific experience. And if you can't effectively train the next generation because the tools themselves are so old, the problem just compounds itself, doesn't it?
Precisely, yeah. The limitations in training resources are, frankly, alarming. Out of 313 FAA facilities, only 50 have simulators for training new controllers. Think about that. The vast majority lack this fundamental tool. And even more shockingly, 0 federal contract towers have them. None. Compare that to military installations, where every single one has a tower simulator to train their controllers. This stark contrast highlights a major systemic gap in preparing the next generation for these incredibly high-stakes roles. So when you bring in new, digitally savvy controllers, force them to use antiquated methods, and then don't provide sufficient modern training tools, you're not just hindering their performance, you're actively contributing to this feeling of being technologically marooned. This overall situation also means the current technology actively hinders the system from reaching its full potential. Even when new technologies are integrated, they often have to be tied back to these older limiting systems, which minimizes rather than maximizes their potential benefits. It's like trying to put a cutting-edge electric engine into a Model T chassis. It might move, but you're still not going to win any races, and you're certainly not unlocking the engine's true capabilities.
So it's this slow, expensive, and frustrating dance between the past and the present. While it's clear this is causing operational strain and frustration for those within the system, the core question for anyone who flies, for all of us, is always safety and efficiency. Is the current system still safe? And what are the real consequences if we don't do something dramatic about this, and, soon?
Right. The safety question is paramount. Currently, the system is safe, and that's a huge testament to the incredible dedication and skill of the air traffic controllers and technicians who manage it day in, day out. They are performing Herculean tasks, truly, to keep things running. However, as the source material pointedly states, quote, "Complacency is the enemy of excellence," unquote. The aging infrastructure inherently increases risk. We're kind of at a point where the margin for error is shrinking. Unplanned outages, for instance, which are becoming more frequent with aging equipment, can have what they call cascading effects across the entire national airspace system. We've all seen stark examples of this in the news recently, right? Leading to costly reroutes, widespread flight delays impacting millions of travelers, and significantly increased workload and stress for controllers. It's a constant, exhausting battle to maintain that safety margin with outdated tools. That battle is just becoming harder to win every single day.
And the ripple effect goes far beyond just inconvenience for travelers or added stress for controllers, right? What's the larger economic and societal impact of this stagnation, this failure to evolve?
Oh, the economic implications are profound and really far-reaching. The current system simply cannot accommodate safely, efficiently large, diverse, complex operations. Think about the sheer volume of air travel and cargo that underpins our modern economy. When the system falters, it's not just a delayed vacation, it's a delayed business meeting, a missed connection for critical medical supplies, perishable goods spoiling, or manufacturing supply chains grinding to a halt. There's one quote from the source that truly encapsulates this existential threat. Complacency is the enemy of excellence, and when we, in order to keep the system safe, begin to pull down, we're pulling down jobs, we're pulling down the economy, we're pulling down demand and availability, raising prices as a result of that. Okay. This isn't abstract. If modernization doesn't happen, we're told to expect widespread systemic delays. Not just isolated incidents like those ground stops at Newark, but expanded disruptions affecting even smaller airports. Consider a place like Abilene, Texas, right? Thrives on general aviation, local commerce. If their operations are frequently hampered by system inefficiencies at major hubs, or even localized outages, it directly impacts their ability to attract business, support local industries, connect their residents. The cost of inaction isn't just inconvenience, it's a measurable, multi-billion-dollar drain on national productivity and competitiveness.
So it's not just about a better flying experience for you, the listener, but a fundamental question of economic vitality, national productivity, and frankly, national pride.
Exactly. That's a big part of the sentiment expressed by leaders at the Industry Day event. It was unequivocal. The U.S., as a great country, a great civilization, a great economy, deserves a state-of-the-art transportation system. There's a clear, almost urgent recognition that other international air navigation service providers, ANSPs, are currently far ahead of the U.S. in terms of technology and efficiency. This isn't just about catching up. It's about reasserting global leadership in aviation, innovation, and efficiency. We can't really maintain our position as a global economic leader if our foundational transportation infrastructure is lagging behind. This is our moment, they essentially said, driven by public demand and the unified voice of groups like the Modern Skies Coalition. There's a real sense of collective urgency to get this done. The economic imperative is really intertwined with our global standing, demonstrating our capacity for innovation and operational excellence.
That certainly lays out a compelling, even urgent case for change. It paints a really clear picture of an aging system kind of teetering on the edge. So given this pressing need, what's the bold vision they've laid out? And what makes this attempt at modernization so profoundly different from, well, any previous efforts? Because I'm sure this isn't the first time they've tried to tackle this beast.
You're absolutely right. It's not the first time. There have been many attempts over the decades, often plagued by cost overruns, delays, and, frankly, a lack of unified vision. But what stands out here, and what gives this initiative its once-in-a-lifetime label, is a significant deliberate culture shift within the FAA itself. This isn't just about technical upgrades. It's about fundamentally changing how the FAA operates, how it procures technology, and how it collaborates. They've outlined 3 incredibly clear and aggressive key pillars for this project. First, operational excellence. That means work completed on time and within budget, no more open-ended programs. Second, speed. An unprecedented 3 to 4 year time frame for continuous improvement. That's a stark contrast to the typical multi-decade government projects we often see. And third, transparency and communications with all key stakeholders, industry partners, labor unions, and crucially, the general public. This focus on speed, accountability, and transparency is a really stark departure from previous, often drawn-out and opaque programs. It signals a genuine commitment to reform.
That focus on radical collaboration and, unprecedented speed is truly new for a government agency of this scale. I heard a phrase mentioned at the Industry Day that really stuck with me: know your job, work together, no surprises. That sounds like a clear, almost military-style directive for unity.
It absolutely is. It's a recognition that for a project of this magnitude, there just can't be any silos, no internal bickering, no hidden agendas. They're emphasizing the absolute necessity of seamless, trust-based collaboration among the FAA, its industry partners, and the critical labor unions representing controllers and technicians. Nobody thrives with surprises, especially when you're talking about maintaining the safety and efficiency of the NALs, right? And what's truly fascinating here, a big part of this culture shift, is that for the first time, the FAA is actively involving end users, the air traffic controllers and technicians themselves, in equipment selection before the purchase is even made. They cited an example with the Surface Awareness Initiative. Traditionally, the FAA would buy a piece of tech, bring it to controllers, and basically ask, hey, can you use this? And often the answer was a resounding no, leading to wasted resources and frustrating deployments. Now they are involving the users directly in evaluating tools, conducting trials, providing feedback, ensuring usability and effectiveness right from the start. That's a profound shift in approach. moving from a top-down mandate to a collaborative, user-centric design.
Involving the end users up front seems like such a logical, yet, often overlooked step. It makes perfect sense that the people who actually use the tools should have a say in choosing them. Has the FAA struggled with user adoption in the past, where they bought a system and then controllers just didn't use it or found it cumbersome?
Oh, absolutely. The historical record definitely shows challenges with user acceptance. Systems were deployed that, while maybe technologically advanced on paper, didn't fit naturally into a controller's workflow or felt counterintuitive. This new approach directly addresses that by building buy-in and tailoring solutions to the actual operational environment. And a central, really transformative piece of Secretary Duffy's May 8th plan is the hiring of a prime integrator. This is a new concept for the FAA in this specific context.
Okay, so who is this prime integrator, and what exactly is their role in orchestrating this monumental transformation?
The integrator is absolutely central, quite literally, to this entire plan. They will be accountable for delivering a complete brand new air traffic control system. Think of them not just as a contractor, but as the master orchestrator of this massive, incredibly complex symphony. Their mandate is to manage the sequencing, the intricate integration of all these disparate technologies, and the overall execution of what the FAA themselves are calling the biggest project that we have ever tried to accomplish within the agency. They need to embody those three pillars we just mentioned: operational excellence, speed, and transparency. This integrator isn't just delivering a product, they are delivering a capability and managing a whole transformational process.
So they're essentially saying, we don't need a specialist in air traffic control systems as much as we need a specialist in managing massive, complex projects. That's a huge departure from what you might expect. What does that tell us about the FAA's prioritization? Are they maybe acknowledging their own historical challenges in managing these kinds of mega projects?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of this new strategy. You've hit on the crucial distinction. The FAA is explicitly not looking for a system or a specific proprietary piece of hardware or software from a traditional aviation vendor. Instead, they're looking for an integrator who can deliver capabilities and, most importantly, someone with a proven track record to manage huge projects. This means that specialized aviation experience, while sure it could be helpful, is not a prerequisite. What they desperately need is a proven ability to integrate diverse technologies, manage complex timelines, and deliver rapidly. This does seem to reflect an acknowledgement of past challenges where the FAA, a deeply technical organization, perhaps focused a bit too much on the individual technical components rather than the overarching program management and integration required for a system of this sheer scale.
That's a truly strategic shift. And how are they approaching the business side of this? Are they open to new models beyond traditional government contracting?
Completely open, yeah. They are explicitly open to ideas for a business model, including innovative contracting methods, novel funding processes, creative acquisition strategies. They're making it very clear they are not constrained by traditional, often slow government procurement systems. They are actively leveraging their statutory acquisition flexibilities, specifically citing laws like 49 U.S.C. Section 106 and Section 40110. These basically grant the FAA unique flexibility in how it acquires goods and services, letting them bypass some of the bureaucratic hurdles that often bog down federal projects. They're seeking a true partner with an open, honest, and supportive relationship, explicitly stating they want to avoid the petty garbage and internal fighting that can derail such a vital effort. And to further align interests, they are even considering contractual incentive to ensure that the integrator's profitability is directly tied to success and the rapid delivery of new operational benefits. This is about shared risk and shared reward, a really modern approach for a government agency.
That's a massive shift, breaking away from traditional, often slow government procurement. And the timeline, 3 to 4 years for a project of this scale, is genuinely aggressive. It sounds like there's pretty much no wiggle room.
There isn't. The message from the top is crystal clear. This is an urgent need, not a typical 20-year government program. The expectation is that the entire system must be effectively replaced and operational in 3 to 4 years. The phrase "no excuses" has been used repeatedly, signaling an unprecedented level of urgency and accountability. There's a strong signal to seize the momentum, the current energy, and the significant political support that currently exists for this modernization. It's a daunting, almost audacious task, and they've used some powerful analogies to illustrate the difficulty. It's akin to changing the tires on a vehicle going 70 miles per hour.
All right, changing the tires at 70 miles per hour.
Or renovating a kitchen with your whole family still living in it and using the kitchen. This perfectly highlights the immense challenge. It must be done carefully, thoughtfully, and without stopping the existing vital operations of the world's busiest and most complex airspace. The system has to stay safe and operational throughout this massive surgery.
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Modernizing without interrupting the 2047 operations, not even for a minute. Okay, so we understand the existential why and the bold what of this plan. Now let's dive into the how. How does a system literally held together by decades-old tech and eBay finds leap into the 21st century in just 3 to 4 years? It starts, I guess, from the ground up with something as fundamental as how these critical systems even talk to each other. Telecommunications.
The telecommunications overhaul is indeed foundational, yeah, and an absolute colossal undertaking. The FAA currently manages over 30,000 separate telecommunications services across more than 4,500 physical sites nationwide. A significant chunk of this infrastructure is heavily dependent on outdated time division multiplexing, or TDM, technology, which relies heavily on legacy hardware. Think of TDM like an old party line telephone system. Communication is rigid, limited, one conversation at a time on a dedicated circuit. It's incredibly inefficient for today's massive data needs. This reliance on TDM leads to historically high costs and what they call accelerated obsolete technology fees, because maintaining these outdated systems requires specialized knowledge and increasingly scarce parts. And adding to the problem, regulations requiring telephone companies to provide copper lines at regulated rates, those changed after 2019. That led to unplanned budget impacts for the FAA as costs just soared for maintaining these old lines.
So they're paying more and more for outdated tech that's becoming harder and harder to support. That's not just a double whammy. It sounds like a financial black hole.
Exactly. And the physical challenge on the ground is immense.
Yeah.
Thousands of FAA sites, many in very remote locations, will require entirely new fiber installations. This isn't a quick upgrade. It can take a staggering 12 to 18 months just for permitting, trenching, and construction for a single site. Now imagine that scale across 4,500 geographically dispersed locations, from busy airports to remote radar sites, literally out in cornfields. The current system also struggles significantly with bandwidth limitations. A T1 line, which, back in the day was considered a really big pipe for data, is nothing today in terms of modern data capacity. Barely enough for maybe a single high-def video stream, let alone critical flight data. This system sometimes is operating on what they call frayed edges when unplanned outages occur, reducing critical services to just a trickle.
Okay, so what's the revolutionary solution to this telecom spaghetti and bandwidth bottleneck?
The solution is a complete, aggressive transition away from TDM to an end-to-end IP, or Internet Protocol network, by 2028. Moving to an IP network is like upgrading from that old party line to the modern Internet itself. Instead of dedicated rigid lines, data is broken into tiny packets and sent efficiently across shared networks. This allows for vastly more information, far greater flexibility, and significantly faster communication. The goal is to create the best performing, most secure network possible with highly reliable, modern digital infrastructure. The benefits are pretty clear. Significantly increased bandwidth to handle all future data needs, much greater flexibility to adapt to new technologies, enhanced agility in deploying new services, and in the long run, much cheaper costs because they'll be on modern, scalable infrastructure. The key challenge, though, lies in managing the incredibly complex coordination with over 210 and likely more telecom service providers across the country, especially for those remote cornfield sites where the return on investment for telcos is inherently low. Cybersecurity is also a major focus here, shifting from a traditional compliance-oriented view to continuous verification of security, proactively safeguarding against threats while maintaining an open, adaptable industry approach.
That sounds like a monumental leap forward, not just for data, but for the entire nervous system of air traffic control. And it's not just data, right? Voice communication is absolutely critical for air traffic controllers, literally how they keep planes safely separated. How are they modernizing that?
Voice switches are, as you said, the primary interface for controllers. They provide the direct means for safe separation and control over aircraft. They are absolutely mission critical. The challenge is, like much of the system, these current voice switches are predominantly analog, with some being alarmingly old, 21 to 35 years old. The sources highlighted that controllers today are literally using equipment that their parents probably used when they were working the towers. It's kind of mind-blowing. Finding replacement parts for these analog systems is incredibly difficult, and the sustainment costs are, again, astronomical. Beyond cost, these systems are incredibly inflexible. Changing configurations or updating frequencies literally requires printing new paper labels and sticking them under physical keycaps. They even shared a vivid anecdote about how fragile the system is. Farmer Joe, somewhere out in Mississippi, put a backhoe into a line and we lost half our frequencies at Memphis Center. This isn't hypothetical. It's a real disruptive event showing the vulnerability.
That's a stark example of how fragile the current system is. A single backhoe, and half the frequencies are gone. Wow. So what's the plan to fix it and bring voice communications into the 21st century?
The plan is comprehensive. Replace 450 analog voice switches at all operational facilities towers, TRACONs, Terminal Radar Approach Control Facilities, and RACCs, Air Route Traffic Control Centers, with native IP voice communication systems. A key part of this is adopting ED137C, which is a common international standard. This is crucial because it ensures interoperable, backward-compatible, and future-proof systems. Lets them connect with diverse equipment and adapt over time. This new setup will provide what they call 5 nines of availability, which means 99.9999% uptime. Basically eliminating any single points of failure and ensuring extreme reliability. Imagine the difference for a controller knowing their primary communication link won't just suddenly drop out. The new systems will feature modern, intuitive interfaces, and there's even talk of integrating virtual reality, advanced automation, and decision support tools right into the voice communication system itself. Deployment will be phased. They call it Wave 1, 2, 3. Starting with smaller towers and progressively moving to larger, more complex facilities like the ARTCCs. This lets them test and deploy iteratively, learn as they go. They've also drawn lessons from international ANSPs like Eurocontrol, InAir, NAV NATS, recognizing the dramatic gap and the critical need for 2 independent voice switch systems for redundancy. Again, preventing any single point of failure from crippling operations. For you, the flyer, this means fewer communication glitches, less chance of delays from controllers not being able to talk to planes, and ultimately a safer flight path because controllers have crystal clear, reliable communication channels.
This sounds like a complete overhaul, not just a patch. Moving from analog keycaps to potential VR interfaces, that's a monumental leap. Speaking of modernizing, what about the core automation systems that actually manage air traffic, the brains of the operation?
Right, the automation modernization. This is about creating smarter skies and enabling faster, more informed decisions for controllers. The problem currently is that the system operates with what they call separate trees. You have different largely siloed systems, TAMSTARs for terminal ops, ERAM for en route ops across the country, ATOP for oceanic airspace. These systems are not fully tied together, creating inefficiencies and complexities. This lack of a common automation platform leads to redundant training. Controllers literally have to relearn everything from the beginning when they transfer facilities, or even just switch between different types of airspace. It's like learning a new operating system every time you switch rooms. New functionality is also incredibly slow to adapt. It can take months for even a simple beneficial tool to be designed, tested, and deployed across the entire NAS. The systems are also highly customized with multiple baselines. They mentioned 3 different baselines and over 200 physical systems just in the continental U.S. alone. This leads to extremely high sustainment costs. A very small change, introduced in January 2023, for example, took an astonishing 8-month turnaround just because they had to validate it across the entire disparate portfolio.
That sounds incredibly inefficient and just stifles any form of rapid innovation. So the solution is a unified, singular platform across the board.
Exactly. The core goal is to transition to a common, unified automation platform. This offers immense benefits. Scalability for future air traffic growth, significantly reduced maintenance costs and complexity, greater operational efficiency, much faster deployment of new capabilities, and crucially, shorter controller certification times because they won't have to relearn entirely new systems. They plan to leverage commercial off-the-shelf or CALOTS software and cloud-based technologies for mission-critical systems. That's a major departure from custom-built proprietary solutions. To explain the architecture, think of it like building with Lego bricks instead of one giant, complex, monolithic system. Service-oriented architecture and micro and macro services mean they're breaking the system down into smaller, independent, interchangeable components. So if you want to upgrade the weather data brick, you can do that without having to rebuild the entire air traffic display house, if that makes sense. This modularity, combined with layered architecture and open standards, means the FAA can rapidly update, innovate, and even switch out specific pieces of technology from different vendors without fear of being vendor-locked into one proprietary system. That's huge. The new system will also integrate vastly more data, like real-time takeoff and landing info, enabling controllers to make better, more proactive decisions. Specific tools they highlighted for immediate enhancement include the Terminal Flight Data Manager, TFDM, for electronic flight strips, getting rid of the paper time-based flow management, TBFM, for optimizing traffic flow and scheduling, and the Surface Awareness Initiative, SAI, for real-time airport ground traffic. For you, the traveler, this translates to more efficient air travel, fewer holding patterns, smoother transitions between flight phases, reducing delays and making your journey more predictable.
That's a powerful metaphor, thinking of it as Legos for air traffic control. It really hints at a much more agile and adaptable future. And what about surveillance? Being able to literally see every aircraft everywhere, from the sky right down to the tarmac.
Surveillance is another critical area just crying out for modernization. The current NAS has a baffling 12 different radar configurations in active use. Systems like ASR9, MODES, ATCBI6, just a whole alphabet soup. This incredible diversity makes maintenance incredibly taxing. Technicians have to be trained on a dozen different systems. And a major problem, again, is that vendors have moved on to newer technologies, often abandoning support for older equipment, leading to the same problem we discussed earlier, cannibalizing older systems for parts just to keep others barely functioning. Furthermore, there's severely limited surface awareness at many airports. Only 44 sites currently have the most advanced systems like ASDX or ASSC, which provide those real-time comprehensive views of ground traffic.
So the immediate problem is too many types of outdated radar and just not enough eyes on the ground, especially at smaller airports.
That's precisely it. The solution involves a radical simplification, reducing those 12 disparate radar configurations down to just one or two standardized systems. This includes the full replacement of 53 non-cooperative surface movement radars, SMRs, at existing facilities, moving from two configurations down to just one streamlined solution. Crucially, they plan to rapidly deploy the Surface Awareness Initiative, SAI, to an additional 200 airports. That vastly expands ground visibility beyond the current 44 sites, utilizing existing infrastructure where possible to speed things up. The overarching vision for the future is a flexible, scalable, and resilient surveillance service and network. Optimized sensors, capable of providing a seamless picture of all air and ground movements. This modernized system needs to be scalable to adopt emerging entrants for future urban air mobility, maybe drones, ensuring we're not just fixing the present, but building for the future of flight. And it will incorporate proactive, continuous cybersecurity measures right from the ground up.
That brings us to the actual physical infrastructure. The buildings themselves, which you mentioned earlier, are decaying. We heard some are literally from the 1960s. What's the dramatic plan to reimagine those?
Yeah, this is a major area of critical concern because, as we discussed, many facilities are deteriorating at alarming rates, contributing to a massive sustainment backlog. The numbers here are truly shocking. The current replacement rate for air traffic control towers, ATCTs, is abysmal, roughly 1 ATCT per year. Given that there are 377 FAA-owned towers across the country, this translates to a mind-boggling 300-year timeline for full replacement at the current pace.
300 years.
300 years. We're talking about aging HVAC systems, dangerously outdated electrical infrastructure, fundamental structural issues like leaking roofs, pervasive mold, even rodent infestations, all of which significantly increase the risk of power outages to critical systems. They also highlighted the extreme challenges faced by remote sites, like the Francis Peak radar site in Utah. Faces severe weather, can limit access for 3 to 4 months a year, making maintenance a logistical nightmare.
At the 300-year timeline, that's not just a problem. That sounds like an emergency. It means most of these buildings would literally crumble long before they're ever replaced.
It absolutely is, and it really underscores the urgency of this entire effort. The proposed solution is to dramatically expedite this replacement timeline, reducing it to a far more practical 80 years. That means replacing 4 to 5 towers annually, a 5-fold increase in pace. Their ambitious plan includes deploying 15 new ATCTs and co-located TRACONs by fiscal year 2028. That's a major acceleration. Even more impressively, they aim to build 6 new state-of-the-art air traffic control centers, or RTCCCs, for the first time since the 1960s, also within that FY 25-28 timeframe. These new centers will strategically focus on co-locating hard-to-staff facilities, making them more attractive for controllers and technicians. They're also piloting a best-equipped, best-served initiative at major hubs like JFK and LGA. This means that by December 2025, aircraft flying into those airports during peak hours will be required to have a specific piece of tech, a multiple aircraft ramp system, or MARS, to help with more efficient gate assignments and ground movement. That's a powerful incentive for airlines to upgrade their own ground equipment. There's a strong call for radical innovation in facility design and construction to allow for rapid, safe deployment without impacting the operation. The ultimate goal isn't just to replace buildings, but to build facilities that can go with us into the future, ensuring this isn't just another temporary fix, but a foundation for the next century of air travel. For you, the passenger, this means a more resilient system, fewer disruptions due to facility failures, and better working environments for the people ensuring your safety, which translates directly to safer and more efficient flights.
So this isn't just about replacing what's there. It's about building a fundamentally new, future-proof infrastructure for the next generation of air travel. It's a complete integrated vision. Now, as we kind of wrap up this incredibly detailed deep dive, what's the path forward? And what's the clear call to collaboration for industry and government to actually make this ambitious plan a reality?
The FAA has laid out incredibly clear principles for rapid delivery, emphasizing a departure from old ways of doing business. They are committed to selecting the best solution that meets the FAA's and leadership's needs, while also explicitly encouraging industry to innovate and adapt, yet keep safety paramount. They're committed to permitting all avenues that produce the needed capabilities and results, reiterating their focus on operational excellence, speed, transparency, and communication. This isn't a rigid old-school procurement process where the government dictates every single nut and bolt. It's really an invitation to true partnership.
So they're really opening the door for industry to bring their best and brightest ideas to the table, even if it's unconventional, even if it challenges existing norms.
Precisely. Industry's role in this is absolutely pivotal. The FAA is actively seeking input through an open request for solutions, or RFS. This Industry Day event was specifically designed to inform that RFS. The RFS is slated for release in early July, and the expectation is for innovative solutions for big, bold leaps and bounds. They're urging industry to propose options and help us shape what that looks like, rather than waiting for rigid specifications. A critical requirement they're emphasizing is that integrator proposals must include how they will prevent proprietary controls over future upgrades, ensuring future competitions and actively avoiding that vendor lock. That's a key lesson learned from past programs that locked the FAA into expensive, single-source maintenance for years. They're also asking for direct and transparent feedback from industry on what works and doesn't work regarding the current procurement system and the FAA's existing authorities, to help them refine their approach and remove any remaining bureaucratic roadblocks. It's really an unprecedented level of openness and collaboration.
That's a huge ask, especially the transparency part, asking industry to critique the very system they operate within. But all of this, with its aggressive timeline, raises that crucial, non-negotiable question: how will safety be maintained 100% throughout such a massive ongoing transition?
Safety is absolutely non-negotiable. It is, as they stated repeatedly, their hallmark. They reiterated, safety is our hallmark. The agency will continue to operate in NAS safely, efficiently, and effectively throughout this entire process. That's paramount. The challenge, as we've discussed, of changing the tires on a vehicle going 70 miles per hour requires incredibly close, continuous collaboration among all parties: the FAA, the integrator, industry partners, the labor unions to scale operations, meticulously manage risk, and minimize any disruption. They also highlighted the critical role of the technical workforce, the men and women who are currently doing that Herculean work to sustain the old equipment. These experienced technicians will be crucial partners in deploying the new technology, as their institutional knowledge of the system's intricacies is indispensable in ensuring a smooth, safe transition. Every single step will be validated and tested to the highest possible standards. For you, the flyer, this commitment means that despite the scale of this overhaul, your safety remains the absolute #1 concern built into every phase of this ambitious plan.
This entire undertaking truly represents a generational opportunity to redefine air travel in America. It's about moving from systems that, feel like flip phones and Atari Pong, to a world-class system that not only matches but leaps beyond 21st century technology. When this is complete, and if they hit their aggressive targets, it will mean safer, more efficient, and more reliable air travel for all of us. Fewer delays, smoother journeys, and a system that finally reflects the innovation and ingenuity that, defines our nation. It's about restoring that national pride in our critical infrastructure. So as we stand on the cusp of this massive transformation, with all the exciting changes we've discussed, from fiber optic networks replacing copper, to smart voice switches maybe allowing virtual reality for controllers, to unified automation platforms, and even brand new future-proof facilities, what single innovation among all of these do you think will have the most profound impact on the future of flying?